Who shows up when the part of you that is always planning, producing, performing, managing, and controlling everything takes a backseat and is no longer running the show? That's what we're going to talk about in today's episode. Welcome to I Buy Myself Flowers. My name is Allison Tibbs, and this is season 2, the reclamation season. Throughout this season, we've been talking a lot about making space for the parts of us that we have judged, that we have deemed unlovable, the parts of us that are needy, the parts of us that have not been able to grieve, the parts of us that want more. And as we've gone through that process, we've even looked at the parts of us that deserve and want rest. So this is kind of a next step to one of the previous episodes around the part of me that needs rest. And it's actually looking at who shows up when we let that part of us rest. And for me personally, the part of me that shows up is the relaxed version of me. And for so long, I didn't really think about relaxation as something that I needed. I looked at relaxing as a way to recover from a lot of the stress and the activity and all the things that I was doing. But I never realized that the relaxed version of me was not the irresponsible version of me. The relaxed version of me and the relaxed part of me was not the lazy, irresponsible part that I was working so hard not to be. Instead, the relaxed version of me was a woman that was truly present and truly able to connect with all of those things that we've talked about in this season. Being able to connect with the parts that have needs, have desires, the parts that need to grieve, the parts that are angry, the parts that are exhausted, the parts that feel unlovable. Because the relaxed version of me, the relaxed part of me, is just another very, very amazing part that doesn't always get the chance to come out. And this weekend, I spent 5 days on a farm, which already just saying that is so interesting to me. I'd say over the past year, the things that I've said yes to and how I've been spending my time, whether it's camping or hiking, just being in nature a lot more has been very eye-opening for me. But this weekend, I said yes to go to a farm that my friend just purchased. And it's like 30 acres, I think. It might be more. And spent the time there. And the first decision that I made when packing my bags to go, because it was a 9-hour road trip from Oregon to California, and I knew I'd be gone for 5 days. And there was a decision that I made, and that decision was I'm not taking my laptop. And that's a big decision for me because I love to say that I can work from anywhere. I can do my work anywhere and I can, be productive and efficient. And I've even told myself I get so inspired with my work when I travel. And I thought I'll be in nature. I'll have these beautiful opportunities to think and to work. And I said, you know what? I'm not doing it this time. So I left my laptop. Now, what I didn't realize is that by me leaving my laptop, it would almost immediately put that overperforming part of me in the backseat. Because I realized that my laptop and my ability to connect to the world and my work and my emails and everything, that was like the talisman of that part of me. And so when I physically did not bring it with me, it unlocked something. And I felt myself over the course of the drive down, having these moments where work would come up and I would think about things, but I slowly but surely was able to just put it away. And I started to feel myself relaxing into the drive. I started to notice more things like the trees and the different colors of the sky. And I noticed the clouds and the different animals. I started noticing the different smells. I started to roll down the window and take in the different aromas of the hay and, the trees and the flowers and the ocean. It was just this beautiful moment where my body started to respond to the fact that that overperforming part of me was not literally and figuratively in the driver's seat. And the rhythm of the farm was so interesting. Every day I stayed in bed till about 10 o'clock, had extremely slow mornings, sat outside, watched the clouds roll past the mountains. Some moments we were clearing dried weeds and overbrush out of different areas or moving equipment from one part of the farm to the other. Sometimes we were picking apples and pears and blackberries, or we were hiking through the redwoods, or sitting in the chairs after eating a delicious meal from some of the fruits and vegetables from the land, and sitting in these really comfortable chairs from Costco, looking up at the stars, watching the meteors. It was just this beautiful mix of all these things that we could do. And I found that never once was this desire or need to feel like I was checking boxes or having to do certain things. It was like everything that I was doing in those 5 days felt like a choice, felt like something that I wanted to do, or I felt ready to do. There was no urgency. There was no stress or pressure at all. And it's interesting because the overperforming part of me, because I really was intentional about leaving that part in the back seat, I never felt the need to have to feel like I was being productive or useful or worthy to my friend or anyone else in the group. There was about 6 of us. And if I decided to clean the kitchen counters and sweep the floors in the kitchen, it wasn't because I felt a duty to do it or responsible to do it. It just was because, you know what? I wanted to enjoy a clean kitchen and I wanted the rest of us to enjoy a clean kitchen. And the reality is both paths to that outcome were the same, a clean kitchen, but one was arrived at a clean kitchen because I felt like I had to prove myself and to prove my worth. And the other was this, I wanted to contribute and I just wanted to do it. That's how I knew the relaxed version of me was showing up. I actually wanted to do housework. What it proved to me was that even in my relaxed state, there were moments where I was still being active. I was still contributing. I was still showing up. I was still being useful, but the pressure wasn't there. The pressure that the overperforming, high performing, high achieving part of me, that ambitious part of me, was removed. And so a lot of the outcomes were still achieved. It just was achieved without a lot of pressure. And for many people, especially if you relate to being a high achiever, high performer, an overachiever, super ambitious person, what happens is that pressure isn't just about to-do lists or tasks or completing things. That pressure becomes this internal system that is the undercurrent of our life. So everything that we do sits on top of that pressure. So everything feels high stakes. Everything feels like it has to be done. And then even below that, what happens is that pattern that we create, there's a belief that we now lean on that we believe is resourceful and helpful for us, is that we can thrive under pressure, that we are good at operating and performing when there's pressure. We don't buckle under pressure. We rise to the occasion. And there are times where that is helpful. There have been moments in my life where it's been a very high pressure situation. Most recently was on my 42nd birthday when I was at a restaurant and I witnessed a woman fall off of her chair and no one really knew what to do. And I'm not saying that I'm a doctor, but I do have some training and experience with that because of my personal training background, and really rose to the occasion and had to navigate communicating with the staff, communicating with the woman who'd fallen, communicating with her husband, communicating with the paramedics, communicating with all these different people while still managing her safety, her comfort, and managing the rest of the restaurant on my birthday, mind you, which is so Allison coded and so overperforming Allison coded. But in that moment, it was actually life or death, right? But that's not the run of the mill. That's not my everyday life. But it's amazing how we can create the conditions where everything feels that high pressure. And so when we release that pressure, it feels risky. It feels scary. Because I think even further than that, the question is, who am I without that pressure? Who shows up if there's not the pressure to perform, produce, achieve, to be successful, to be ambitious, to manage or control everything? Who am I without it? That pressure becomes the thing that we believe makes us who we are. And yes, I do think there are moments where we need that pressure, where there are moments that pressure has allowed us to rise to the occasion, to do great things and do amazing things. I truly believe that. And I never want to lose that. And I never want to lose my ability to be able to perform in high pressure. I love that part of me. It's one of my favorite things about myself. But it's not the conditions that I need to live in 24/7, and neither should you. But the slippery slope is when you think, okay, I need to release the pressure, we tend to think that it's all or nothing. And so we go into trying to meditate for an hour or take a spa day or a massage or whatever it is, whatever we think is the opposite of that pressured overperforming part. That's not what we're talking about in this. And if you're honest with yourself, you know that the body is asking for rest. The body is asking to slow down. The body is asking for different things. You're paying attention to your energy, your mood, your behaviors, and they're all indicating like it's time to take a chill pill. It's time to slow down. As I say, your check engine light is on. But we are so good at overriding those signals and signs that we just keep going. And we don't give ourselves to meet the woman or meet the person who sits underneath that pressure. We know who we are when something needs to be achieved, handled, taken care of, managed, controlled, but we may not know who we are when nothing needs to be achieved or accomplished. And that can feel scary, especially if you've built your identity on that. I've had moments in my life where a role or responsibility has been taken away or has ended, and I'm literally thinking, well, what do I do now? Who am I now? I see this a lot when, especially with parents, as their children are growing up, where they no longer look back on the first day of school when the parent drops them off. And now they're just excited to go forward and meet their new friends and meet their new teacher. Or when my mom and when I went to college, and, she was a big part of my everyday life, and I was a big part of hers. And I'm sure there was a big gap and a big hole in her life of, well, what do I do with myself now that I don't have to manage and control this human living in my home and needing me for everything, basically? Or when you get laid off, or a relationship ends, or someone that you've been caring for gets better or passes away, and your role as a caregiver is gone. These are real things that we're met with because the pressure is what keeps us going. And so when the pressure goes away, which in some cases can be this thing that lifts this burden or lifts this additional role of responsibility, we still are like, I need to fill it. Because maybe if you don't fill it, then you're just left to meet yourself. And now you're meeting yourself, but you're also meeting your needs, your wants, your failures, your desires, the relationships, the questions, all these things might get met in that stillness and silence. So instead, we find something else to fill that space, and we find something else to maintain that level of pressure that we're so used to. It's familiar and it's safe. But the 5 days on the farm proved to me that the pressure could be removed and I could still be responsible. I could still contribute. I could still be useful. I could still be myself, and that my worth was not measured by what I did. My worth was simply the fact that I was just an active, present being with my friends on a farm. And that was a beautiful reminder. And again, this season has been something that I thought I would be sharing more of the things that I've done in the past. And now I'm getting more and more opportunities to take things to another level and continuing to get these lessons and to pressure test these lessons and remind myself that this stuff actually does work. So the reframe for this, especially if you want to reclaim that relaxed part of you in a way that's going to allow your nervous system to not freak out, relaxation is a state of being. Relaxation is not something that you earn. It's a state of being. And that can be really hard if you are a person who's so good at doing. But I have to remind myself often that it's called human beings, not human doings. And I think a lot of us are really good at doing and we're really bad at being. And not only is relaxation a state of being, it's also a choice that you make. Because there are always going to be problems and issues and emails and responsibilities and roles and requests and demands. Those are always going to exist. But it's when you choose to allow them to exist and create space for you to take the pressure off for a little bit. You're not meant to be in that level of stress and anxiety and pressure 24/7 because you're a human being. You're not a machine. You're not recharged with more gas or a quick reboot. And so it's about learning how to remove some of that pressure for a specific period of time to allow the other parts of you to come to the forefront. And in this case, it's allowing that relaxed part of you. Because what you may not realize is that the relaxed part of you actually has so much to offer and bring to the table if you allow it. Because the relaxed version of you is less about being reactive to everything and is more responsive. Because the relaxed part of you moves at a pace that allows you to be able to observe, allows you to be able to connect, allows you to be able to hear and see and listen and to feel. It allows you to connect with parts of you that might not always make it to the decision-making table when the overperforming part is super reactive. It's moving, 10 steps ahead of everyone else. So it's very reactive. But this is where you can be so much more present and conscious and intentional because the pace is slower because the pressure is removed. So you're making decisions in a way that you may not be used to making, and it could feel a little uncomfortable. And the reality is that sometimes you're going to need that other high performing part to make decisions. And sometimes you want the relaxed version of you to make the decisions. And I'm not talking about work-life balance. That's not what I'm talking about because I actually don't believe in work-life balance. I believe that we have a finite amount of water. Okay? Go with me on this analogy here. And we have many buckets. Some people only have 2 buckets. They have 2 big roles in their life, and that water can kind of move between 2 pretty easily. But if you're someone like me, where you have multiple buckets, you have to start to think about where does that water go in each bucket at what part of time. And it's learning that every single bucket will not be completely 100% full all the time. Sometimes my entrepreneur bucket is going to be at 80% and the other 20% gets divvied up into the other buckets, which means my brain can't really be focused on those things because right now my bucket has to be full and really present in this bucket. But the second that I close my laptop, or in this case, when I left my laptop home, that bucket drained completely, or at least to about 10%. I think that part's always still on, but other parts showed up because I now had the levels in those buckets. And the relaxed version of me got a lot of that water. And so that can be one of the ways to reframe this is when do you need to have that bucket filled and when can you start to reallocate? But again, relaxation is a choice. So if you're choosing that, then you have to make that choice. But I knew the second that I was back to work on Tuesday, that relaxed version of me had to go down a little bit, actually a lot of it, because I had a lot of work to do when I came back. But that was okay because one, I was rested and allowed that part of my brain to shut off. But also because that's when it was advantageous for me to have it there. I didn't need a relaxed pace. And there was some pressure. There were 3 emails that I had that were high stakes and high pressure that needed my full attention. And I couldn't be laissez faire about it. So that's what I'm talking about when we look at this reframe. If we look at relaxation as something that is a state of being and it's a choice, and it's something that doesn't have to happen all the time because I personally love the dopamine hits that I get when I'm crossing things off my to-do list and accomplishing goals and accomplishing tasks. But I also appreciate the moments where I can simply make choices from a relaxed state of being. And it might be a different choice. And I think the last part of this reframe is that there is a part of self-trust that has to happen or that gets built when you give yourself permission and space to allow the relaxed part of you to take place. One example in particular from this weekend was we decided to go hiking in the redwoods and it was beautiful. And we get to the trailhead and it's blocked off and the parking lot's blocked off. So now we're not quite sure where we're going, but there's a small loop even in the parking lot. So we're walking through the parking lot trying to figure out where to start the hike. Now there was 2 of us who were in our relaxed state. Our relaxed part was definitely there. And the other 2, the managing, the producing, performing part showed up where they took out their phones and they were looking at the hiking trails and they only had 1 bar of service. So they're walking around the parking lot trying to get service, trying to map everything off and map everything out. And myself and another person, we're just wandering through the parking lot, through the little miniature trails that kind of lead back to the parking lot. And we were just thinking, how amazing is this? We were just so in awe of what was around us that if we didn't find the trail out of the parking lot and we'd made our way back to the car, that would have been fine for us because we got outside, we got fresh air, we had lovely conversations, and we weren't concerned or worried. We weren't deep into the forest where if we were lost, it would have been a problem. It was enough for us to know we just need to turn right or get back on the paved trail and head back to the car. Because in that moment, I didn't need that bucket of solving, figuring everything out to happen. I didn't need that. So that bucket stayed empty while the relaxed version, the adventurer version, the version of me that seeks wonder and awe, that bucket was filled. And the other 2 people, they eventually did find a trail for us to go on. And I'm grateful for that. But honestly, I would have been totally happy with just the 20 minutes circling around the parking lot because I saw amazing trees and nature and birds and all of the things. And that was good enough for me. But that's the difference. And it's not a right or a wrong because for those 2 people, that's what they needed. And there's no shade to that. And I'm grateful for those 2 people showing up. But when I saw them in action, again, my overperforming part was like, no, I'm good. And the relaxed part was like, yeah, we are good. So that's how you live it in practice. And it can happen anytime you want. So as we think about how do we put this into practice, this is something that I typically do when I'm on vacation. And I'm like, I don't mean like this past weekend when I was on the farm. I mean when I'm maybe in another country or doing something that's a little bit out of the norm of my everyday, where there's a lot of new adventures, new things to see, new cultures, new food. What I do is I kind of take this alter ego, if you will. There's this version of me that comes about when I travel. And I let her take the lead. And so the practice that I want to offer you is this relaxed self experiment where you're going to find 20 minutes, an hour, a half day, a day, whatever it is. You can determine what feels right for you and what feels safe for you. But what you're going to do is you're going to actively put that managing, controlling, overperforming, high achieving part of you, you're going to literally put it in the back seat. And you're going to let the relaxed version of you, the relaxed part of you, take the lead. And there's no right or wrong way of how to use the time that you allot for this, but giving yourself that parameter, that time bucket, is a good way to start this practice. The only caveat for this is that the relaxed part of you makes all the decisions. So you start the practice with the simple question: if the part of me that's always producing, performing, managing, or controlling, pushing is in the back seat, what would the relaxed part of me choose right now? And there's a couple of things that you can think about as you go through this process. So I'm going to share 3 things that you can lean into when you do this. The first is listen to your body. You're going to take a deep breath in through your nose, out through your mouth, and you're just going to take some time and just breathe, finding a rhythm or a cadence that feels really good to you, and start to notice your breath going in through your nose, down through your throat, filling up your stomach with air, coming back up and out of the body. You might start to notice tingling in your toes and in your fingers. You may even notice your heart beating throughout parts of your body. You might start to pay attention with what do you need or what do you want? And maybe it is something to drink or something sweet to eat. Maybe it's a big stretch or a deep yawn. Maybe it is to put a comfy blanket over your shoulders or stepping outside to let the sun warm your skin. Maybe you want to get up and dance or hug someone or make out with someone. Maybe you want to lay down or be still. Maybe you want to call someone. It doesn't really matter, but you're listening to what your body needs. And we talk about that in one of the earlier episodes. It's when you're able to get still, but now you're really checking in with that relaxed part. Then you want to follow what feels interesting. With whatever comes up, you want to meet it with curiosity. You're not judging it. You're not criticizing it. You're not thinking how to make it more productive or something you have to achieve. You just meet it with, that's interesting. And then see where it takes you, see where it leads you. This weekend, at one point in the afternoon, we were all in the living room, and some of us were reading books, some of us were scrolling on our phones, some of us were writing in notebooks, some were just staring out the window, watching the clouds roll by the mountains. And I got this ping of, I want to go outside and walk through the olive trees. There was no real reason for me to do this. I just said, that's interesting. And so I got up and took a 5-minute stroll through the olive trees. Didn't announce it to anyone, didn't make a big deal about it, and just walked up and down the row of olive trees. And nothing brilliant happened. I didn't get a groundbreaking idea for business, or I didn't see anything cool, or nothing really felt like it changed me. But I felt the ping that said, I want to go walk through olive trees. And so I did. And 5 minutes later, came back inside, went back to my spot, grabbed my book, and finished reading. Again, there was no need to make that a productive moment or a moment to seek out something. It was simply me just trusting that that's what I needed in that moment. And that's what I did. And probably I just needed some fresh air and to move my legs a little bit. But when you meet it with curiosity and that, that's interesting, and then you follow it, you never know what can happen. maybe nothing at all, or maybe something brilliant could happen. But it's learning to let the relaxed version and the relaxed part of you take over the driver's seat. And it removes the need for your inner bully to start to criticize everything, every single thing that you do. And the third part of this is give yourself permission to change your mind, change your pace, change your rhythm, change the direction, stay a little bit longer, leave a little bit earlier. I think for high achievers, especially, we're so loyal and committed to the things that we are saying that we're going to do that if we change our mind or stop the course, we feel like we failed, or we feel like we weren't loyal or committed or irresponsible. And in this moment, when you're doing the self experiment, because there's no achievement, there's no goal, there's no pressure to be productive, you can easily change your mind, change directions, choose a different path. And there's no real issue because everything's low stakes. If you remove the pressure and you're taking on letting that relaxed part of you lead, there's also that realization that there's nothing high stakes, right? I wouldn't do this experiment if I knew that I was in a situation where it was like a high stakes situation. I wouldn't have my relaxed part of me walk into a high stakes meeting and take over. I don't trust that for myself. But this weekend, when there was really no stakes involved, I could easily change the course path and it would have no real effect on anyone. And so again, the inner bully couldn't criticize or judge me for changing my mind, stopping, starting anything. And maybe you start to build up the trust in that state to realize that there are other areas in your life where maybe it is safe to not stick with something, or to realize that it's time to let something go, whether it's a role, a responsibility, a relationship, a situation, a task, whatever it is. But those are the three things that you can lean into when doing this experiment. So think about when you can schedule some time to put the relaxed version of you in the driver's seat and let her lead for a little bit. And definitely, if you are traveling and have a vacation coming up, even if you spend the morning letting the relaxed part of you lead, because those conditions typically make things feel a little bit more easier and accessible to try because you're in a different environment. No one really knows you, so you can actually let that version lead. So that's the practice. And I would love to hear how that goes for you. And I would love to see how you use that. And not only what happens in that moment, but what happens after. What becomes alive for you? Because that experiment is simply just a moment to collect data, to prove to yourself that the world won't fall apart and that nothing bad will happen. And if you want to take it a step further, because you're probably a high achiever anyway, and you may want to have a reflection point, where here's some questions that you can reflect on after you've done that experiment. How did I feel when pressure was no longer making the decisions? What did my body ask for? What choices became available to me? What did I learn about the relaxed part of myself? And where could I allow her to have more influence in my regular life? So those are some questions that you could sit with. And as we're wrapping up, you know the drill. We have the Nourish Life companion deck that I'm going to draw a card from. And sometimes the questions are perfect alignment with what we're talking about. And sometimes it just adds another element for you to think about. But the goal here is that I do believe as we're navigating our reclamation season, curiosity is so important. And so it's about asking different questions and asking better questions and asking questions that we may not really think to ask ourselves, but could unlock something really, really powerful on us. So let's see what the deck has in store for us today. What helps you truly recharge? That is the question. What helps you to truly recharge? Part of me thinks this question's already been asked before, but if it's showing up again, that must mean that it's right on cue. And I think this is really helpful because asking this question now is more so around that relaxed part of you. And I actually think this question was brought up during the needing to rest episode, which is really interesting. But now we're asking, what do you need to really recharge? But we're asking the relaxed version of you, not the exhausted version of you. The relaxed version of you might have a completely different answer. So when you're thinking about taking the overperforming, exhausted part of you and putting it in the back seat for a little bit, maybe you can ask that relaxed version, what would you need to truly recharge? And you might be surprised at what comes up. So that's all I have for you today in this episode. This is episode 6. We have 2 more episodes left. And as I mentioned, when I first started this podcast season and decided to come back and relaunch the podcast, it was really talking about the parts that I wanted to reclaim and how I was reclaiming them. And it was an invitation for you to do the same. And the feedback I have been getting from people who've been listening to the episodes is that it is helping. And it's helping them to see what parts need to be reclaimed, but it's also giving them permission to start to walk in those spaces. So there are going to be tools and reframes and practices and questions that I'm asking. And my hope is that you're really leaning into these, and hopefully they are helping you with your own reclamation season as well. Well, we're wrapping up. This is episode 6. We have 2 more left. I can't believe that that's how we're moving and that it's almost over. But hopefully you're starting to understand the power of what a reclamation season can be for you. And so this week, I want you to buy yourself flowers by letting the relaxed part of you make one decision. Whether it's today or this week, let that part make one decision. Let it take the driver's seat. Let it lead for one moment and just to see how that feels. I always love having you here, and I'm so grateful that you are with me on this journey, and I'm grateful to be with you on your journey as well. So thanks again for being here, and I will see you on the next episode.